had that something in you where you wanted to strive for better. So describe for me, what has your journey been like in life?
The journey it's been very hard because, I was on public assistance, so it was like, at first it was a boundary there. Anybody knows about public assistance, they don't want you to go so far or they're going to cut it off.
When you describe yourself now, tell me, who's Freddie Stevenson, the man that you are now?
A few years ago, I remember in college, they would always have speakers come in and ask us who we are. I wouldn't have been able to answer the question. It probably would have had something to do with football. I'm a fullback for Florida State. I want to play in the NFL. But now it's just simple. I'm Freddie Stevenson, man of purpose.
This is a passion of mine. The whole premise behind the Jazzie Conversations with Jazz podcast is to spotlight the fact that it is now time for you to get your dope comeback story.
Hey, say Jazzie Conversations with Jazz. Jazzie Conversations with Jazz. Say Jazzie Conversations with Jazz. Jazzie Conversations with Jazz.
Every Monday, I call people into a studio and we dig into their comeback stories, because I know that we see people in their glory and we see people when they're on top, when they can have that silver lining to them, but we all go through some things, right? We all go through some things, and I think once we're real with people and we let people know the trials and tribulations that we've gone through, it only makes us human and it connects one of us.
So I just want to know, what would be your advice to someone who is looking to start their own podcast?
First and foremost, let me back up. Find your voice. What are you going to talk about? Is it something that people want to listen to? How long will your podcast be? What's going to be the consistency of your podcast? Are you going to do it like weekly, daily? Are you going to do it monthly? So once you find that, because that's going to indicate if somebody wants to listen to your podcast or not. I do know how I'm doing it. I'm doing it with God. I'm doing it because this is a passion of mine. And when you are passionate about something, you're not going to stop. So it really it comes down to how bad do you want it. It definitely comes down to how bad do you want it. And so thank you so much for tuning in to the Jazzie Conversations with Jazz podcast. This is episode 148. It is a special episode for me. It's also on a special day. Of course, it's on a Monday. And if you are tuned in, you know that you are listening to this podcast because I believe in the power of the comeback. I truly believe that you can come back from anything with God, the right resources, knowing how to use those resources effectively, and your willingness to do the work. Before we get any further into this podcast episode, I need for you to make sure that you are following, you have liked, you have subscribed to the podcast on all of the social media platforms and on all of the podcast streaming platforms. It is very simple. It's at Jazzie, Jazzie, Conversations with Jazz on Facebook, IG, on YouTube, and all of your podcast streaming platforms. And so what I want you to do with my special guest, I also want you to like, share, and follow her as well. She has an amazing story. This month is a month where we do raise awareness with autism. And so without further ado, I want to go ahead and bring my special guest on, and I'm going to introduce her. I have Miss Carla A. Moultrie. How are you, Carla?
I'm good, Jazz. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastically well. I am so thankful that you were able to join me on this special podcast episode. And so I want to do you justice, all right? And so my special guest, Miss Carla A. Moultrie, is a wife. She's also a mother, a sister, a professional, an author, and an autism advocate. Professionally, she is a contracts management for GE Vernova with over 17 years of contract management experience. She is an alumnus of both I'm going to get this one out because I love this school. Florida A&M University, as well as Georgia, the University of Georgia, Terry College of Business. She has a master's degree of business administration, and she is also my soror. She is also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Now, Carla's life changed in the summer of 2015 when she began to notice changes in her toddler daughter, Camille. She and her husband, Nathaniel, began to seek evaluations for their daughter and were told twice that there was nothing wrong and that she was a late talker and she would talk later. Eventually, an evaluation would confirm their suspicions. Shortly, she and Nathaniel would learn that Camille would be diagnosed with the autism spectrum disorder and sensory processing disorder. She is also a parent advocate for children with autism and connects other parents to resources, education, and support through the many experiences she and her husband Nathaniel have compiled navigating as parents with a special needs child. And so, Carla, we're going to get into how you formed your book, the many milestones and the many trials, the errors, the successes that you have had in being a parent to a wonderful daughter. Who just happens to be on that autism spectrum. And so I just want to know, how is Georgia treating you first and foremost?
Georgia has been good to me. I'm in the Metro Atlanta area, so as most people know, it's a melting pot for so many different cultures and communities, and it has been a blessing to us. Just so many resources that are available
Yeah.
to families, so it's a blessing. It's been good to me.
It's been good to you. So Carla and I share the fact that we were raised in Polk County, Florida. So we never will ever forget
Never.
our roots here.
Never.
Absolutely not. And I also met Carla through a special friend of mine. Her sister and I are very good friends. And I'm not going to share the whole and full story in detail, but one of the core memories that I have of you, Carla, is when we voyaged to the mall to look for a special outfit for a special occasion. And I was so nervous. I'll probably tell you off camera if you don't remember what I'm saying. I was so nervous about trying to get this suit together, not wearing specific colors because I shouldn't have. And that will just stick out to me because it was just like you were like my guiding post in that situation. I was like, oh my gosh, I remember when Carla kind of led me down that path, to do something special. So thank you for that.
No problem.
I will never forget that. And so this month is a month that's dedicated to raising awareness with autism, and just in the little bit of knowledge that I've been doing, or research that I have been doing on autism. It could be both when a child is diagnosed with autism, when adults are diagnosed with autism. Actually, when doing that research, I think it was 1 in every 36 child is affected by autism, and 2.2% of adults are actually diagnosed with autism, and this is worldwide. And so, people always try to go back to what causes it. We want to know what causes it. And medically speaking, it could be both genetics and environmental. And a lot of people think that autism occurs through vaccinations, and the medical field errs on the side of saying that that is absolutely not true. It just so happens that at the time that a child is supposed to get vaccinated, that's when they start to notice the signs and symptoms of early stages of autism, or identifying those different signals and signs that you would get if a child is autistic. And so in your journey, you mentioned in your bio that you and your husband you suspected, but the doctors told you on 2 different occasions that there was nothing wrong with Camille. And so walk me through that journey of getting that particular diagnosis twice, and then how did you just not stop at what the doctor stated, but you kept pressing it and researching it?
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Jazz. Just leading into how my husband and I, how we first started noticing symptoms. And actually, my husband noticed first. We had literally just moved from New Jersey to Atlanta. And I would drop her off to daycare, and she was at a typical daycare at the time, and she would cry from the top of her lungs. I mean, just cry, scream, hold on tight to me. And they would tell me she would cry like most of the morning.
Mhm.
And I was just naive. I assumed it was separation anxiety.
Yeah.
I just assumed she was in a new place. She didn't like these people. And I just needed to be a helicopter mom. And thankfully, the daycare had cameras, so I could monitor her all throughout the day. I could see what she was doing, what she wasn't doing. And I shared it with my husband, and he said, well, I noticed she's not using her words as much, because she was first of all, she was born 10 weeks premature.
Okay.
So she was born 10 weeks premature. She was a tiny something. She was 3 pounds, 1 ounce when she was born. So, but then she was in the NICU for about 3.5 weeks. And then she came out, she just grew from the time she went into the NICU until she came out, and she was just thriving. She was she was literally hitting milestones ahead of time. She was doing really, really well, very busy, just, a busy child, exciting child, happy child. And then it stopped shortly
Yeah.
after here. And like I said, I literally thought it was just, new space. She was, nervous. She didn't really like the school. Maybe we need to find another school. And as I began to watch the cameras, I would notice she would isolate herself.
Yeah.
And from the other kids, she would literally walk off and be in corners. And I shared that with the daycare director, and the daycare director told me, she said, yes, she does that all the time.
Mhm.
And we've seen that before. And she encouraged me to get her evaluated. She told me what she thought it was. So we sought out the first evaluation through a pediatric a developmental pediatrician, and they said, no, she's fine. Girls are different.
Yeah.
Girls talk later. They're more mature.
Mhm.
So after we went through that evaluation, we was like, and for me, I was like, okay, I was happy.
Yeah.
I was happy they were saying it wasn't autism, but the research was saying something different.
Mhm.
So we went for a second evaluation a few months later. Same thing. Now, this time she had more symptoms of autism, but not enough. And when you're getting your child diagnosed with autism, they usually have to score a certain way. They ask, especially a child that young, you have all these questions and these markers on this assessment that they have to score on for them to be able to get an accurate diagnosis. And the first time she didn't have enough, so they said no. Second time, they said no, she's got a few more, but no, but she was fine. So as we kept watching, we noticed about maybe 6 months in, after the first initial evaluation, we went ahead and got her evaluated the third time. And I tell you, it was like a ton of bricks hit me. I always remember it every day. I was every time I tell the story, I was standing with my husband in her behavioral specialist's office, and she literally told me she does have autism. And I think I in my mind, I collapsed. My husband said I didn't collapse. He said I just fell back in the chair.
Yeah.
And I remember her saying she may never speak. You may never hear her say I love you. You may never hear her say mommy. You may never hear her say daddy. Some children with autism, depending on how profound it is, you might have to institutionalize her one
Yeah.
day. And she may never, you may prepare to take care of her whole life. And you may, they, all these negative things they tell you
Right.
that may happen with your child. And, for me, I had all this vision in my head of what raising a little girl was going to be. She's
Yeah.
going, we get to dress alike, and we get to,
Right.
do nails and pedicures and all the ballet and gymnastics and all the fun things that I had planned in my life for her. I saw them not happening.
Did it
Hearing
just feel like and I know you are telling it specifically and directly, but at that moment when you felt like you just fell out, do you just see like these things one by one just dissipate? Like at that moment, is it just that you just see them going away, or are you immediately trying to come up with a plan, or you're just thinking my entire plan of what I envisioned for my baby is just gone?
the latter, everything is gone.
Yeah.
You know, because you know how we know people who
Yeah.
who have an autistic child. You don't really, and you see them navigating it, and but you don't really know the intimate details
Right.
of what's going on behind the scene and what it looks like in their life. And I think to hear them say you may have to take care of her the rest of her life, and you may
Yeah.
never be able to do this or that. I couldn't fathom that, and then you start to think about, I mean, literally this in minutes and seconds, you begin to think about, well, what happens when I'm gone? Who's going to take care of her? You all of these things, and all those things happened to me within a matter of minutes. But I'm thankful, her behavioral specialist, and her psychologist, she was so amazing and so supportive. I mean, I was emailing her last week. We talk often, and she said, but early intervention is the key.
Yeah.
Said you guys have done the right thing. You had 2 prior evaluations. You didn't get what you thought you needed, but as parents, you all kept going. And she said, I'm happy that you all did that. And she said, we're going to get her in speech therapy. We're going to get her in occupational therapy. We're going to get her in this. We're going to get her in that. And early intervention will help her. It will help her, help her to live a life where she can thrive. And we did. From there, we eventually started occupational therapy and speech therapy. And to be honest, she took to the occupational therapy, but she did not take to the speech therapy initially. She was just not interested. She would look at the guy who would come to her home and do speech therapy. She would look at him, side-eye him, like, he need to leave because he in my
Yeah.
space. He was like, girl, I need you to do what these people need you to do. But she wasn't having it. She was just this busy little something who wanted to do what she wanted to do.
Right.
But we've
So
seen
what's the difference? What's the difference with the occupational therapist? What specialty does that particular therapist do?
Well, a lot of children with autism, they need physical therapy, occupational therapy, because some children require physical therapy because they have issues with balance and walking and walking on their tippy toes. She didn't walk on her tippy toes.
Yeah.
She never did. But that's a very
It's
unique
a distinct trait. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big trait, but she never did that. So because I remember when I was doing my research, I was like, well, she don't walk on tippy toes, she ain't autistic.
So you good,
After I've heard all these, no, I was thinking, oh, she's not doing that, but she was doing these other things.
Right.
Occupational therapy, a lot of children struggle with their fine motor skills, like holding a pencil and writing and learning how to write their name, and it's just, and even like textures and the sensory issues, sensory overload. And so she struggled with her her fine motor skills, and she still does, and she still receives occupational therapy to help her. And it's funny because she did an evaluation last week for a private school, and I was watching her write, and I was just, because what was interesting, she could write before she got her diagnosis. She used to write. I mean, I have a picture holding her writing in coloring, and then she stopped completely.
Oh wow!
And just stopped. And I was watching her last Monday. I was sitting with her in her her assessment for this school, and I was so proud. I was like, wow! I mean, she's doing so well. I mean, it's taken us a while to get her back, on track. But I sat and I witnessed her doing it, and I was excited for her growth and her development and her progress. And I'm confident she's gonna thrive and do great things.
I love that. And so we're gonna get more into her journey, because it is such an amazing one, and you are, as parents, very resourceful, and like you stated, that early intervention does matter. I wanted to support the parent who has just received a diagnosis and they have no idea about what to do. I'm assuming that you started with your pediatrician first, and then from your pediatrician gives you a referral, and typically they will give you a referral to a neurologist, right? And then from there, that's when your neurologist will tell you about the behavior specialist, or about the different doctors that they would need to see. And a lot of it has to do with therapy. And so walk us through that particular journey, because in my brain, this is what you do from A to Z. Like, this is what we had to do, or I would be trying to think about, what we need to do. And I just want to insert this. You also are in a great space because there are a lot of places where neurologists are few and far in between. And I will tell you that even here in Lakeland, Florida, um, just doing my research there legitly is probably one or two pediatric neurologists that you
Mhm.
can get in. I've even been at the doctor's office, and it is like a cattle call.
Oh
It's
yeah.
so many kids. It is so saturated. So just tell me, how did you find your right fit with your doctors? Because I know you had to go to more than one if you had different diagnoses,
Mhm.
and then just tell us that journey. Like what doctors should a parent seek if they have suspicions about their child being on the autism spectrum?
Okay. The blessing is that we were in the Metro Atlanta, and there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of resources here.
Yeah,
And we had just moved here, so I utilized my network, my family
yeah,
ones, that I had
yeah.
kids I knew they were the same age or similar age as my daughter. I reached out to get a pediatrician. I found a pediatrician. She was amazing. And then I remember her, after I mentioned to her that I thought my daughter might be autistic or showing some signs. She didn't think she was, because statistics even show that girls are diagnosed at a lower rate than
Yeah.
males.
I thought that was so interesting. I'm like, okay, women,
Yeah,
but okay.
yeah, 80% of the cases are males and 20% are
Yeah.
females. And Black females are the least to be diagnosed. Just like any other thing with our health, that we're told, no, you're not, you're okay, you're not having this, you're not having that. The same thing with little autistic girls, African
Yeah.
American girls, same thing. And but my pediatrician then referred me to a developmental pediatrician.
Mhm.
And from there, the developmental pediatrician said, okay, I see some deficits.
Yeah.
Let's try to get her to a pediatric neurologist. And the wait list a lot of times is so long. So what she did, she recommended me to the behavioral specialist slash psychologist. And we got into her, the first one, and then we went to a second one, and then finally a third one. And the third one by then referred us to a pediatric neuro, neuro, pediatric neurologist.
Mhm.
And by then we already had a diagnosis, and he just confirmed what we already knew.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to go through those steps, and then from there they recommend therapies, and sometimes the wait list for therapies are long as well, because there's so many kids being diagnosed now. And but the blessing is early intervention is key. I mean, I've seen my daughter really thrive. It took a minute, probably about a good year and a half, to really start seeing results. And during that time, I know for me, it was very, I grieved. I literally grieved the reality that things wouldn't be what I thought they would be.
Mhm.
And because I wasn't seeing, the signs, because I said early intervention is key. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking I'm gonna jump in and start seeing results in a month too. And
Yeah.
that just didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
It took about a year and a half before we began to see, keys. And I'll never forget the first time I heard her say like a full word that
Yeah.
was audible. We were in Target, and they had a Pizza Hut in the Target, and she looked up and said, "Pizza, pizza," and she pointed pizza because she loved pizza. And I was like, "Oh!" I was so excited. I got out the line and went over to Pizza Hut and bought her a personal
Yeah.
pan pizza because
Whatever
she
pizza
said
you
pizza.
want, baby.
We got to reward you. You said,
Yeah.
I mean, she said it. And that just really just amazed me. And I remember she was going through ABA therapy there, and ABA therapy is applied behavioral analysis. It's really, I would recommend it for anybody who has a child on the autism spectrum. It really helps with behavioral issues. It helps them with just daily life routines that they struggle with, that come natural for us, that they have to be taught. And I'll never forget, the therapist used to come to our house 3 times a week. And she was an Asian young girl. She was like 26, 27
Yeah.
at the time. And she would like talk to my daughter like she was her child, and she was not playing with her. And I would have to like walk away, because in my heart I was like, I know she ain't talking to my baby like that, because I'm about to jump on her. But she was holding her like accountable. And she's like,
Yeah.
"You know better. You better sit down." And I'm like, what's she talking about? You know, but I knew if I stayed there, Camille wasn't gonna comply.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let me just walk in the other room. She not hurting her, she not harming her.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious to watch. But I remember one day she asked me, how many words do you think Camille has? I was like, oh, she says about 20 words, like, you know, and she wasn't speaking in complete sentences. So she can say about 20 words. And she said, no, she has about 500 words in her vocabulary.
Oh,
and she's like, 4. She was like, 4. I was like, what? And I was like, no, like you got her mixed up with another child.
Yeah.
And, she literally told me to not be in the room, and she recorded her. She set up a camera and she recorded me, you know, recorded her and Camille going through all these sight words. And she was saying hard and difficult words like octagon, dodecagon, and well, I mean, all these like shapes that were hard. I couldn't pronounce it for. And I was like, I mean, I still have the video. I keep it in my phone and remind me of, you know, just how far she's come. And that was at 4. And I didn't know she had these words in her brain.
Yes.
And she them and she understood what they were and she could recall them. And she was like, yeah, she's about 500 words in her vocabulary. And I was like, how do you know that? She's like, because we do them in our therapy sessions, and she knows. And she was looking at me like, why don't you know that? And I was like, this made no sense. But I just realized that she has so much in her. And I began at that time, about 4.5 years old, I began to realize that life is going to look different. God doesn't waste anything. This is not a problem. She's going to thrive. She's going to live a great life, just like anybody else. It just may look different for her. And that's when I really just got really excited about advocating for her, because I knew that I had to advocate for her until she could advocate for herself.
Absolutely.
And I knew that if she was having these struggles, and as a parent I had them, I knew other parents probably were, and other kids were having it as well.
And so when you find that great spot, because you're in a great spot right now where you find, okay, I can still do something that's going to be very productive for my child, but it also is going to be rewarding for me as her parent. Talk to me about the support that you found. Like, how did you find your village of support?
Well, one of the persons that I reached out to, I don't know if you know Janita Wells, Richard. She went to FAMU. She's a journalism major. I remembered her because we went to church together in Tallahassee, and her son is autistic. And I remember her, being in church together, and her son being there. And I remember them saying he wasn't talking. And this was years ago, like 20 years ago. And I remember hearing that, but I didn't remember what happened. I just remember, and then I left, and so I just remembered it. And then I remember her seeing her on social media, and they lighted up blue for autism awareness. So I was like, oh, he has autism. Like, okay, that's why he wasn't talking. But I remember vividly, and I reached out to her, and she literally her son was like in high school at the time. And he was doing so well. He was in Omega Lamplighters. I love
that.
I mean, I was like, this is Malachi? Like, he was just this different person that from when I remember him being like 3 or 4 years old. And he was doing great things. He graduated high school. He was at Lively Technical Community, the Lively Tech program in Tallahassee. And he was an artist. He was just doing amazing things. And I was just like, oh my God, just to see that, it just really blessed me. So I reached out to her, and she was just telling me how it was tough, and how, they got support in Tallahassee at FSU. And then she asked me, did I know another rattler? And we were about the same age, and her son was a little bit older than my daughter. And she said, well, she's navigating this whole autism spectrum thing too. And her son loves music, because my daughter loves music too. I was saying how she really gravitated to music. And she said, yeah, he really likes music. He's doing great and wonderful things. He was about 6 or 7 at the time. And maybe 9. He was a little bit older. And she said, you should reach out to her. So I reached out to her, had this conversation, and we are constantly in contact about what to look for and how to advocate for your child, because she's an educator. And she was like, Carla, you got to do this. You got to do this. Stay on top of the school system. Don't let them tell you your child can't do this. Do this, do that, do that. And she was in the DC metro area, and right now her son is a senior in high school.
Right?
He is the drum major at his high school,
Ooh, I love
and
it.
he is on the way to Florida A&M University, and he will be the first autistic student in the marching 100.
Let's
And we
claim
are
that. Let's
so
go.
he's there, and I can't wait
Yes,
to come to homecoming because I told her, I said I got to be there screaming and
yes,
yelling for Ricky, and so she's a part of my village. And then there's this other mom here in Atlanta. Her son, very similar narrative. He was nonverbal until he
yeah,
was 7 or 8 years old. He's now at Clemson University. He's in the band at Clemson. I mean, we I mean, just there are so many people with our similar stories,
yeah,
and then they had the blessing of having a manager who was very honest with me and very transparent with me about his 3 children. His daughter is autistic,
hmm,
and he's like, Carla, and he was transparent. He's a white man. He said, you got to stay on top of the schools because your daughter she can thrive. You live in Georgia. Every state school in Georgia has a program for autistic kids. Your daughter can go to college. She can do this. She can do that. And he's told me all 3 of his children had developmental issues. His daughter
yeah,
is autistic. His son has severe ADHD. Both went to Georgia State, got degrees, and it just looked different for them. It took them time, and being advocates for their
yeah,
children, and working with them, and they're young adults, and they're thriving.
yeah,
And just hearing that was so refreshing, because
yeah,
when the initial diagnosis is she'll never be able to do any of that.
yeah,
And the reality is some children won't be able to do it, but
hmm,
then there's so many that they're defying the odds, and they are being able to do these things.
yeah.
So that's what my village began to look like.
Love
And
that.
I just began talking to other parents, and there's groups on social media.
Mhm.
I wouldn't get in all those groups, but
Yeah,
some of those groups are really they're really supportive for
yeah,
women and parents that are just navigating this
yeah.
journey.
I wanted to definitely spotlight that educational side because when you are a parent of a younger kid, education is so important at that particular point in their lives
Mhm.
because that's their world. Like that's what we're told to do. Like at this age, this your child is learning the fundamentals so that they can develop into a successful adult, right? And so
Mhm.
when thinking about what autism is, it's just the way that the brain processes, the way that the brain works, the way that it grows, and it is not going to grow at, or it's not going to function like a typical atypical adult, or the way that a typical human functions. And so understanding these milestones, they can come sooner, they can come later, they just develop differently, right?
Mhm.
And so in the education system, you and I had a conversation previously about some of the deficits that we do have in education, whether it be the public sector, the charter sector, or the private sector. It is really the knowledge,
Mhm.
having someone who has the knowledge of how to service properly,
Mhm.
effectively, ethically,
Yeah.
who are neurodivergent, right? And so, how has that process been with you? Before answering that, will give examples because it's so heartbreaking to parents because
Mhm.
I'm at a private school and it is a school who focuses on um, educating our kids at higher levels. We have smaller classes, and the product that we offer is so appealing to parents who have a child in a public school setting where the class sizes may not be conducive to what their child needs. And sometimes the resources are not conducive to what their child needs. And it breaks my heart every time a parent reaches out to me and they're like, Jazz, my child is autistic. Like we are just looking for a school where they will thrive. Like we know that they have the knowledge inside of them, but they are not thriving in their current environment. And it's so difficult because my school does not focus on kids with autism either. Although we may offer a better setting, we would still have to get resources and professionals to come in to service that child effectively as well. And so I want you to speak to how you advocate for your child because I do know a friend whose child is autistic. And when I say she goes toe to toe with with educators, with our school district, because the thing is there are resources there, but everybody's stretched. But when I say she is a strong advocate for her kid and she's not going to give up, she's going to have him in a proper setting. And it is not necessarily a setting that's outside of the normal classroom setting of his peers. So what have you had to do? What are your experiences in the educational process for Camille?
Oh wow, that has been a journey. I could write a movie on it. It has been a journey. When she was first diagnosed, she was in a traditional daycare. And what we realized is that, and I loved it because it was a really amazing daycare for neurotypical children.
Yeah.
Neurodivergent children, it just, they didn't have the skills.
Yeah.
And that was disappointing for me because I really wanted, it became highly recommended and I really wanted her to be there. But we realized that we had to put her in a space that was appropriate for her. So she ended up going to it was a public special needs pre-K. And she did that for 3 years. And what I quickly learned is that the public school system, not all, but a lot of persons in the public school system, educators, administrators, don't understand autism. They literally don't. I'm not an educator and I didn't major in education. So, we knew special education was something that was offered when we were growing up, and we know it's still available. But special education does not automatically mean they understand autism and that they can teach autistic kids and neurodiverse kids. It just does, it means that. And so I saw that, I was doing double duty, working at home, trying to help her, and my mom like, well, what are they doing at school? What are they doing at school? Because, you're spending most of your day there and, this is wearing me out. But what was happening is I began to learn that they just don't understand. So her kindergarten year, we decided to try a private school. And the private school was absolutely amazing. It was expensive, but it was really amazing. And one of the things that I noticed about that particular private school is that they focused on a lot of ABA therapy, the life skills, getting the children prepared just for life, but not so much academics. And you need both. But I'm like, she's 5. I need her to know how to read. I need her to count. That's what we're gonna focus on. They literally had a bed in a room where they teach the kids to go in and learn how to make up their bed, to do chores. I'm like, I ain't worried about making beds. We can learn that at home. We can learn that later. That is not a priority. I need academics focused on. And I noticed that they weren't as strong with that. So then COVID hit. And we were at the end of the school year virtual. So the next year, first grade, we decided public school. And we got in public school and she had an amazing first and second grade year. Just absolutely amazing. We saw her just thrive, leaps and bounds. And then we got to third grade. And because in the public school system in Georgia, if your child has special needs or in autism units, they are from kindergarten to second grade, they're supposed to have the same teacher. And then third to fifth grade, they're supposed to have the same teacher. So third grade, we get this new young guy. I really liked him. He was nice. He was just young. He was new. He didn't have any skills or any training. And so he left after that year. Third grade was just kind of like, he was like their big brother. The kids liked him because he was like a big brother to them. Didn't see a whole lot of growth. So we were concerned about that. Because I was noticing it early, I was out at the school every other month. And then, I know they hated to see me coming, but is what it was. And so we get to fourth grade and he leaves after that year. And so we get a new teacher. She was a former social worker, had never interacted with autistic kids. And I said, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. I took it all the way to the county superintendent for special education here in Georgia in our district. And I said, we demanded that she be placed in either another class or another school. So there was a neighboring school that literally just started an autism unit with a teacher with 25 years of experience.
Awesome.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And fourth grade was great. We get to fifth grade, she leaves. She leaves. This teacher leaves. Fourth grade teacher leaves. So we get this new teacher who has very limited experience. She's only been teaching 3 years, never taught autistic kids, doesn't have, she's not certified. And I'm just trying not to scream and
Yeah.
pull my hair out. I'm like, we're doing this again. We're
Right.
back to this. So in the process, my husband and I decided, we started doing our research because we know next year she goes to middle school. So we found a middle school where she's going. We did the whole IEP meeting with them, the transition plan, and I asked very direct questions. I said, how long are you all planning to be in middle school from 6th to 8th grade while she's there? How long are you planning to be there? Because I need her to have the same teacher. I don't
Yeah.
need her switching up because,
Great question.
one thing about kids with autism, they need routine. Like
Yeah.
they will spaz out on somebody new if they don't like them. And I heard these ladies were really great, but they were like, well, we might do 2 more years, both of them. And I already knew that because one of her former classmates, who's a year ahead of her, is already there. And his mom told me, she said, oh yeah, they leaving in like a year and a half. So you might not get them the full 3 years. And she was happy her son was gonna have his full 3
Right,
years.
right.
But I already had a little, insight. So when they told me that, my husband and I said, we're gonna just go ahead and go to private school route, because one thing about a private school is that they know their population. They're like you're where you're at. You know what you focus on,
Right.
and I want her to have that consistency throughout her these formative years. Through middle school, I need her to have that consistency, and I don't want her to be in a position where her 6th grade she might have this teacher, and then 7th grade somebody else, and 8th grade somebody else. I want her to have the consistency, get what she needs, so we can thrive.
Yeah.
And that was a hard decision because it's not a cheap school, but it's something that's necessary. And like I don't know how Florida is, but you get so much of whatever the state would have given them, and then the rest is on you as a parent.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, a lot of parents can't afford that, afford to do that. But we're having to make that sacrifice for her, and I know that that's a challenge for a lot of parents that are in this space.
I would imagine, and I would hope that if they're since autism has reached it's not at its peak in terms of people knowing about it. I feel like it's still on the trajectory of being in a spot of normal conversation, so that funding does go there. But I would just imagine that there are now groups who may be advocates for grants and for scholarships, and then not knowing how that's going to be affected by this new administration that we have in the US. But I would hope that there are resources out there for parents who can't afford, these magnificent opportunities, because one of my family members actually had her daughter in a private school as well, and it was a hefty cost that she had to pay for. And I was just thinking, like, my God, like, what if she wouldn't have had the financial resources to do that? Like, this particular family member just would have been lost, and they're very resourceful. So I don't think that she would have just been completely lost, but it was such a burden off of, them to be able to have the resources to go to a specialized school that would actually cater to the needs that she actually needed. And so I love how passionate, and of course you're passionate because this is your daughter. I love how passionate, how adamant and intentional you have been about Camille's success. I used to marvel in the stories that you would share, like when you guys would have nail day, when she would let someone do her hair, and I'm like, okay, Camille is like how you said, like they gain the skills, and then sometimes they take a step back, but it just seemed like she was continuing to grow in that situation, because I remember seeing her at one event that I was at with you guys, and she wasn't communicating, and she was like kind of irritable, and then I was just like, because I would watch you, because I'm like, I know from your Facebook posts, like just your journey, and I was interested, I was vested. But I would love to see the stories about like her progress, her successes. And one of the things that you did is you turned her into being awesome. So I want you to get into the character in which Camille has become, because she's definitely making airwaves. She's making moves all across social media in essence, and all of these magnificent things. So Carla, tell us how you got that idea to turn your daughter's journey into something amazing and awesome.
Thank you, Jess. It's so interesting. I remember when just navigating it, we would take her, because one of the things her therapist said to us, she said, I want you to expose her to
Yeah.
everything. Everything. She said, I do not want you all to keep her locked up and away and home. Don't she said, I want you all to live. She's gonna have to learn how to live in society with everybody else. And you're gonna have to help. And I'm so grateful she said that, because I never intended to try to lock my child away, but she affirmed what I believe so many parents that are navigating this journey would want to hear. And we took Camille, we began taking her out, and I remember one Christmas, she was around 4. We were at my husband's uncle's house, and he has a lot of little small grandkids, and they begin to say things like, well, Camille won't share her toys. Camille had her iPad and her iPad or my phone, and she would be content with that. And she would be, they didn't have iPads. Their parents were the more traditional parents. They gonna make them not look at devices all day. I was fine with her device. And Camille would have her iPad, and she'd be and watching all the fun cartoons, and they wanted to watch them too. So they would want to come swarm around her. And a lot of kids with autism don't like all the people in their personal space. And Camille would be like, she looked at them like, back up. Like it was, it would be all in her face. I'd be so embarrassed. Lord, she just emailed everybody. And so they would say things like, Camille won't share her toys. And when we would go to Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner, we would always, or a barbecue or something, we would always stop and order pizza. Like we would bring pizza over, because she wasn't going to eat what everybody ate. A lot of kids with autism they won't eat, what everybody else is eating. They have very sensitive palates. So we would bring pizza, or we would get McDonald's or whatever. And the kids would be like jealous, because Camille got pizza and they making us eat these baked beans and potato salad and macaroni salad. Right. And all. They wanted pizza too. So I would find myself like, and this was happening all the time. They would say, Camille won't share her pizza with us. So then I'm like, okay, if we come over there, how many kids gonna be over there? I buy 3-4 pizzas. Pizza, because everybody gonna get pizza too. So y'all don't think I'm just making my child be special. And I would find myself like certain toys that she had, they would want to play with us. I bought 2 or 3 of the same toy to take it over there, because I know this little girl gonna love a toy. I was like, why are you buying extra toys? Because I need everybody happy. Not just my child, your child. I'm trying to figure out, how to make all the kids happy, because they would put me on children duty. All the grown people would go off, and I had to monitor all the kids. So so I started noticing they always would say that. So in my mind, and I knew they weren't being mean. They were just being kids. Right. They were curious, So I'm thinking, if they are having these questions when we're at home, and she's 5 and 6 years old, and we're around, her cousins, I'm sure other kids think that, in school, in the gen ed population, or at church, or, and that's just a normal thought to ask those questions at that young age, it's harmless. So, I remember talking to Tanya, my part of my village. She calls her son her super duper kid. Now he's Superman. He's grown. I love it. We make our kids these superheroes. Yes. And she said, and I always say she's awesome. She's just awesome. I'm just so proud of her. And she was like, well, girl, that's your awesome girl. She's just your awesome girl. And I was like, yeah. I was like, just like Clark Kent is Superman, Camille Moultrie is awesome girl. So that we just came up with that. And she was writing a book about, her journey. She just written a book about her first journey, with him. And she said, have you ever thought about, just penning something, And I said, I have. I thought about doing a children's book. I said, I don't know anything about a children's book. And she said, well, what would you want if a child was reading a children's book, what would you want a child to understand? I said, well, I would want them to understand what autism is and what sensory processing disorder is in a very elementary form, nothing clinical. I would want them to understand. And I would want them to know that she does have challenges, but she also has strengths. And that's consistent with, anybody else with autism. She said, well, that's what you need to put in your book. Yes. Simple as that. And I wrote it out, and I had it for like a year, because I didn't know how to get it illustrated. I had no idea. And I was on a FAMU call with Rattlers. And
You're just magnificent over there at the house of Seven Hills. Just admit
I was. It's always us. It's always us.
always.
And one of my she's older than us. She had just written a children's book about her son Levi, and they had it on the screen. And I hadn't seen Levi in a couple years, but I just noticed the illustration looks so much like Levi. I was like, oh, he looks just like our son.
Yeah.
A little book about affirmation for little black boys. And I reached out to her. I was like, hey, can you share your Illustrator with me? And she's like, sure. She called me and we got on the call. And she told me, she said, yes, but he works with this particular publisher. They're in the Tampa area. So I said, okay. So I reached out to them. I told them what I was doing, and I said, let's do it. And what was interesting, they had never done a book about a neurodiverse character. He done a lot of children's books, illustrated a lot of children's books, but it was very interesting for him and the publisher because they had to study. Like they just didn't understand. Like, and they were like, this is different for us. We don't understand autism either. We've heard of it, but we don't really understand it. So he asked me, he said, do you mind if I look at your social media and look at her pictures? I want to capture her expressions and you know this. I said, sure, do whatever is necessary. And I remember the first morning I woke up and I saw to an email where he had sent me some of the illustrations. And I just bawled. I was crying. My husband was like, what's wrong with you? And I said, look at the pictures. Look, they look just like her. And my husband was like,
yes.
Oh my God, like this is amazing. This looks so much like her. And I sent him a message. I was like, amazing. Like, and he was like, I was so nervous you're gonna think that it didn't look like her, it didn't depict her. I'm like, this looks just like her. And within a couple of weeks, it was complete. And then we launched the book in April of this is the third year, 2022. And awesome. And it has honestly been a blessing. I mean, I literally wrote the book for little children, thinking, helping my little cousins and other little kids. But it has turned out to be such a blessing. Literally, it's in India. I mean, I literally had the largest energy company in India. One of their executive directors reached out to me. She saw it on LinkedIn. And she asked me to partner with them to help them do a series of webinars for parents navigating autism in India, because they don't have a lot of resources. Autism just became a diagnosis in 2016 in India. Prior to that, persons with neurodiversity were pretty much put away in India. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they were just excited to see that. I mean, educators from across the country, were buying the book in bulk. I mean, they reached out and they said, it's in a very elementary way, but we're learning. I mean, educators have literally told me, we didn't know this. We didn't know that, some children with autism, the reason why their mom sends them the same lunch every day is because and they don't eat the food at school because it's sensory. We didn't even know that. We just, and in my mind, I was so shocked because and when I first heard that 3 years ago, I was thinking, you all are educators and you're teaching our autistic babies and you didn't know that. Part of me I was completely shocked. I just thought, how did you not know this? I mean, I had to learn this as a parent, but how did you not know this? And you've been teaching 20, 30 years. But one of the things that one person said to me is that, and it calmed me. She said, autism wasn't a buzzword in 1997 when I got my bachelor's, or 2000 when I got my master's in special education. It just wasn't. So they weren't teaching, what autism was. So there's a lot of theory that they learn about special education, but no, practical experiences applied. So a lot of things that, and they've had to learn how to they are learning even now how to readjust to children with autism. So I give more grace to educators now. I don't expect them to know everything, but what I have done, my husband and I, because my husband is a pastor, we saw churches not having space, creating spaces for children with autism. So we began to see, and not just autism, just disabilities and period. We need to create more spaces in religious spaces. I mean, a lot of the larger churches have it, but a lot of the smaller churches don't have it. And that means there are families in your community who are probably not going to go to church because there's not a space for their child. They would want to go to church on Sundays, but there's nothing appropriate. The music may be too loud. It may overstimulate them. So
Yeah.
they're going to just stay home.
Yeah.
And then we even look in corporate spaces, employers need to know what it's going to look like for their employee, who may have a challenge that they may have to leave early or they may have something going on. So I've had employers, major corporations reach out to me and do engagement sessions with their HR teams because they didn't, they don't even think about it. And sometimes,
they don't. Carla, they really don't. Like I have had to step into a space of, one of my employees and just trying to explain it to everyone else. And it's like, their eyes were like, oh. And I guess just me being in that educator space, like we're all in the education, space here, where I work professionally. But it's amazing that some adults won't pick up on it. They'll just think there's something strange about this person, or in that setting that I was in where I experienced it. And I'm just like, to me, it's clear as day. And it's like, if you just sit and you speak to this person, nobody wants to go around and just say, hey, I have a diagnosis of whatever. But if people who are in the space of being managers or being directors and they have someone under them, if you have that conversation, it just makes it so much clearer for people to have room for acceptance and understanding. But for me, I've been able to see it in the space of youth, but then also in how adults navigate professionally and with dignity, because it's amazing the way that it's amazing the way that people think differently. It's amazing the way that people process differently. And you would think that they're just stuck in their words, where they have processed things over and over. And what they've done is they keep coming up with different scenarios or options. And like their brain has to focus back on this. Okay, now I get what you're saying, but I was thinking about this and I was thinking about this. And I'm just like, I am just fascinated the way people think.
Yeah.
So I can pick up on things like very quickly. And it's just like, okay, I know there's something there. So let me tap into that and let me explore that in a professional way. So I love the way that you tapped in, and I love the way that corporations are tapping into you now, because that is so important.
Yeah. And it's just giving them the grace, because some people think that you're using it as an excuse. Oh, she just being lazy or he just being lazy. They just using their kid as an excuse. But autism at times is very unpredictable. I mean, there are times when it's very predictable. You know your child gonna do certain things the same way all the time. There's gonna be that day when your child have a meltdown and the school gonna call you.
Yeah.
And they have a meltdown.
Yeah. Very, very much so. So I want you to tell me now, where is your brain going when it comes to Camille as a teenager, because she's getting to that point, a high schooler, as a woman? Like, what is it that you see for your daughter? What does she thrive at? What does Camille like? What do you see her being?
We know she likes music, just music in general. So one of the things, she goes to music therapy. One of the music therapist things that the music therapy told me, she said she likes strumming the guitar, and I'm like, no, she doesn't. She's like, okay, you got, and my mother-in-law borrowed one, and I know she would, pick it up and play with it, but and that's a more controlled setting. So she does what they tell her to do versus at home, like randomly doing things. So we said that when we get to middle school, because they have a band at the middle school, at the school that she'll be going to in the fall, we said we're gonna explore seeing what instrument she picks up. Because my husband was in the band at FAM, so he's hoping she really likes
into it.
He's hoping she really takes to it.
Yeah.
They said they have tennis lessons. They're gonna give them tennis lessons. I'm like, I don't know if she's that coordinated for tennis. They're like, well, we're gonna try. If you enroll her in tennis, we're gonna, and my husband likes tennis, so he was like, yeah, let me see if she learned how to do tennis. So we're going. I'm trying not to impose my desires on her. I'm trying to let her just. I want to help her identify what her greatest strength is and help her flourish in that. So I liked music as well growing up. So, and I played piano I took lessons for a short period, and I even took violin lessons for a short period. So I'm hoping she's gonna pick up one of those instruments and go with it. So
good.
We're gonna see for that. She's she loves science. She loves math. So, I'm grateful that she likes academics. So we're gonna see what that looks like, throughout middle school and high school, and we're just gonna see. I don't have um, an idea. I just want her to be successful at whatever she wants to do.
I definitely respect that. I definitely do. And so, Carla, this has been such a great segment of information. Of just, I hope it has opened the eyes to people who did not know, a lot about autism. People who try to put the people who have been diagnosed on the autism spectrum like in a box, because it's not. People maneuver in and out, and it's just a matter of just doing research. I've watched videos of people who have been diagnosed with autism as an adult, and they didn't see it as um, a negative thing. They saw it as a relief. It's like, okay, now I can identify with what I've been experiencing all of my life, and no one would ever tell me what it is. But now I have a connection to something
Mhm.
that now
Mhm.
it makes sense to me, and I can show other people how to navigate in this world, of being neurologically divergent. And so I I thank you so much for being open to share your story, your family story, how awesome Camille is. And I just want you to just end on what message would you like to send to parents who have kids who are on the spectrum, and definitely let us know how we can follow you and purchase the book.
Okay. One of the most important things I would say to a parent who is who are in that initial stage, if you're just not, if you're curious and you're seeing signs, don't be afraid to get your child help. Absolutely, do not be afraid, because early intervention is key. It's nothing to be ashamed about. One of the things I find about these autistic kids is that they are amazing.
Mhm.
A lot of them, their IQs are higher than ours. They're brilliant. Things just may look different for them.
Yeah.
It may look a little different, and that's okay. That's completely okay. And what I would also tell parents who are already on this journey is, find time for yourself. Do that self care, whatever that is for you. Find that time for yourself. And find your tribe. I know there's one group on Facebook called Autism Parents.
Mhm.
It's about a 500,000 people. I mean, some stuff is good in there, some stuff is bad. Eat the fish without the bones. And then there's even this group called
Mhm.
Black Autism Moms, where it's about 20,000 women, and they are moms and grandmas and aunties, and they are literally navigating this space together. Again, everything in there is not what you want to hear, but believe me, there are things that, I mean, people literally say, "Hey, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. What did you guys do?" I mean, and it's a lot of great resources. I mean, some
Mhm.
people don't know that, because people are from all over the country, different states, different programs that you can
Yeah.
get and have access to. And some people just don't know that they exist. And a lot of these women, you could just drop a question out there, and they'll say, "Hey, yeah, I'm in North Carolina, I'm in Kentucky. This is something that's specific to our state." It's the resources are there, and you can find your tribe, and take your children out, expose them to
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Because one thing that I say is that my child is not going to adjust to the world. The world is just going to have to adjust to her. You might be an inconvenience person, and I know some people have a different philosophy about that. Like, hey, you've been inconsiderate. Your child is making too much noise in the restaurant or whatever. Well, you're just gonna have to adjust. You're gonna have to learn to live in a world with people who are different.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's what we're gonna do. That's a part of awareness. That's a part of acceptance.
Yes.
Because we'll never get or achieve the acceptance and the awareness if people are not exposed to it.
Very true.
When the days of leaving our children home in a room, not exposing them to life, are over. We're just
Yeah.
not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
There's so much more advocacy now, where people are a lot more compassionate. And believe it or not, young people are so open.
Yeah.
I feel like our generation and people ahead of us, they might be done lost it, but the
Yeah.
kids, they're philanthropic. They're about, I mean, they are like, they want to be awesome girl's friend.
Yes.
I mean, when I go and read in schools, like last week, I mean, they were like, one of the boys told me Superman and Spider-Man used to be his favorite. a superhero, but not Awesome Girl is, and he want to be her best friend, and they want to help. They want to help these kids. They want to be their friends. They want to help her eat more vegetables. Well, why she don't like broccoli? I like broccoli. I like green beans. So they're there. So we have to do that and give our children that space and that opportunity to grow and thrive.
Absolutely. Good. And so I'm going to put some of your social media handles up. And so you can follow Carla on her different socials. I think I went to the wrong one.
Yeah, I'm at Carla A Moultrie on Facebook and Instagram, and on Awesome Girl Books on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Yes, you are. And so, listen, Carla, thank you so much for taking this time to talk to my Jazzie crew out there. Thank you so much for bringing awareness and being an advocate for children with autism, and especially your daughter. I think there is much to be said about a parent who stops at nothing to make sure that their child is treated fairly, equitably, and especially in the education system. But it's more than just educational, it's social as well, because we all live in a social environment. And so keep at it, keep being amazing, keep being awesome, and we will definitely follow you and support you. And so the book, you can order and purchase the book on Amazon. Is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon, BarnesandNobles.com, BooksAMillion.com, Walmart.com. Anywhere books are sold, you can get the book.
I know that's right. Listen. And so it has been so great to see you, to catch up with you. I'm so glad that you are thriving and just as awesome as the day that I met you. And so I appreciate you being now a part of my Jazzie crew with episode 148.
Thank you so much, Jazz.
You are very welcome. And so thank you, Jazzie crew, for tuning in. This has been episode 148 of the Jazzie Conversations with Jazz. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow on IG, Facebook, and on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. I will see you again for episode 149 next Monday at 7 p.m. Make sure you understand that now is the time for adult comeback. I truly believe that we can come back from anything with God, the right resources, but you have to know how to use those resources effectively and your willingness to do the necessary work. And so I will see you back here for episode 149. Have a great day. See you later, Carla.
Thank you, Jazz. See you.
You're welcome. See ya.